Hello and welcome to the Matt's Movie Reviews podcast. I am your host, Matthew Pejkovic, and this is episode number 663. Set for a limited theatrical release at the esteemed Alamo Drafthouse Cinema is Corey Feldman versus the World, an independent documentary that follows former child star turned musician Corey Feldman as he embarks on a rock tour with his band of lingerie-clad angels, only to watch his passion project fall apart in a whirlwind of ego, paranoia, and abuse of power. A film 10 years in the making, Corey Feldman versus the World chronicles how one man's passion project can be another person's hell, while placing a lens on the cyclical nature of exploitation in the entertainment industry. And for everyone out there, you can go right now to coreyfilm.com to find all the info in regards to where you can watch the film if you can't get to the Alamo Drafthouse. It's not available in all regions, but slowly and surely this film will spread because it is that good. And I think it's really highly recommended by me. It really is. I mean, I watched this film about a couple of days ago. Something I really found to be unexpected in its delivery and so many other things. I'm going to talk to you right now with the film's director, Marcie Hume. Marcie, how are you?
I'm good. Thanks for talking with me. And thanks for talking about the film. It's just lovely to hear through your ears.
So, what I found really fantastic about this film, I think a lot of people look at Corey Feldman and they can use him for comedic fodder,
Right.
and people have done that. But your documentary, what I really like about it is that it's not exploitative in any way. It's a fly on the wall. It chronicles what you see. It is what it is, right? And I think what's really great on that part is that there's a million ways a documentary can go when you're in post and what you can do with it, but you really made sure that you were just showing the truth as it was, as it is. You're not making fun of him. You're not doing anything else. It's just about a real mature, level-headed exploration of this very complex man, and I just want to give you kudos for that before anything else.
Thanks. I appreciate that. We took such extraordinary care to be just very judicious and really try and show all sides of Corey and show his struggle and everything that he was pursuing and really God, I've thought and talked about this so much. I mean, obviously what drew me to him is the inherent kind of humor and
Mm.
absurdity in seeing this pursuit, but there are so many layers to him. And in fact, we ended up exploring even more layers than I think we ever imagined. And there's a great responsibility that comes with all of that, I think. So yeah, we were just extraordinarily cautious in everything that we approach. So very, very proud of all of the different notes and the beats that I think we were able to hit in the movie.
No, you should be. You really should be with that. And kudos to your editor Adam Franklin as well for a lot of
Yeah,
that, I think as well.
absolutely. Yeah, Adam Franklin
Um,
is next level.
it seems to me when watching it that Corey's a kind of guy who's very wary about who he lets into his circle. He's very, there is a bit of paranoia and such. I think it just comes from years of being within an entertainment industry and the things that he's talked about. How do you manage to be able to gain his trust and try to get that kind of access to what he was looking for at the beginning of this
I talked with
documentary?
him. Yeah, I talked with him for quite some time before we started filming the documentary and pursued a TV project with him. So we made a pitch tape basically for a TV show, filmed in his house and filmed with an earlier iteration of Corey's Angels that was actually entirely different people other than Courtney at that point. So we filmed a more kind of TV focused version of things, and he really liked that tape. And eventually, after my feature documentary Magicians came out, they invited me into finally to start filming the documentary. I talked about a documentary for a while, and I'm not sure exactly what the secret sauce was that finally made it happen, but I think it was that film coming out and them realizing that I was going to make a real movie. So it was tremendous to finally get to be able to do that, because ultimately, as much as I love television, I think documentary films allow for that openness of exploration. And I knew it was going to, for the most part, just be me and a camera on the road. And I think that allows for as much work as it is, and as much as you just have to roll and roll, it really allows for things to develop and unfold and for you to see what happens. And any documentarian will tell you that that sort of filmmaking is stressful because you don't know exactly what you're going to have or what you're going to end up with, but it allows for, I think, the purest form of storytelling on film.
As I said in my intro, the documentary is like chronicling this rock tour with his angels. Angelic to the Core was the album that he had, a double album that he had out there. And I really have a healthy admiration for artists who try to do kind of like go down different avenues and try different things and such, because it can be a risk to their, to whatever professional career they had established by then. Interesting thing about Corey is that music has always been part of his kind of thing. I've seen videos all the way back to like 1992 of him being like on Howard Stern's show when he was,
Yeah.
just outside of like doing the Burbs or after doing the Burbs or something, and he will be doing his music and dancing then. I mean, it's been with him for a while. But sometimes people need to know their limitations, and it seems to me Corey wants to make the greatest show on earth, likened to like a Michael Jackson World Tour or Kiss or something. But he's only just a small independent band, and I think that kind of lack of respect for the limitations placed in front of him can make for just great unintentional, almost Spinal Tap kind of moments on the road there sometimes.
Isn't that incredible? We do have to know our limitations and what is realistic. And this comes up all the time with him, I think, is this delusion of grandeur, which at some level you want to have that level of passion and this unstoppability and this idea that you can do anything. I mean, I think any of us that are pursuing something crave that level of intensity, but there is a stopping point to that. And there's a point where it starts working against you, right? And it starts working to make you just not understand the realities of the world. And finding that exact edge for a person, I think, is an inexact science, right? So, all of us have to find, the world is always going to give us those limitations. The world is always going to provide no and places that are going to say, you're not let in here, you're not welcome here, we're not giving you a stage or a platform. So I think it's better to have more gusto and belief in yourself, but I think we see where it can harm you and how it can backfire against you for sure.
Well, it's really interesting because we are introduced to Corey's brother in the film, which I didn't even know he had a brother, in the movie. And he talks about how when you growing up years and years and decades of being surrounded by yes men, it's hard to really distinguish, what those limitations are. And I think with him, so many people kind of like catering to whatever big ambitions that he has. I imagine on his part, he feels like he's on the right track, but a lot of times the road that he goes down is filled with a lot of potholes, and even sometimes even goes over that cliff sometimes because he can't see what's ahead of him.
Totally. I think we all hope that we have people that we can rely on to tell us the truth about what's going
Yeah.
on. But I think we're all careful with each other too in our own relationships about how to present that to somebody else and say, "Oh, look, this is not going great." So I really love that moment with Eden. And I waited. I remember on that shoot day, I waited all day with Eden. The bus was waiting in New Jersey while the rest of the band went into New York, and I waited with Eden because I really wanted to speak with him and talk with him on his own so that I could understand his perspective, because it was obviously going to be unique. And it was clear they had their own dynamic, not just from the fact of being brothers, but because he had developed his own idea of what he could say and how he could treat the situation. Obviously, a lot of it based on the fact of growing up together as brothers. But, Eden is also a hard-headed person. And so you get two determined people like that together, it's just going to be a tremendous thing to see. So I really waited it out that day to talk to Eden so that I could get that viewpoint. And I think it was essential actually for the movie just to understand that one component.
This Movie Reviews YouTube channel is brought to you by TeePublic. TeePublic is the world's largest marketplace for independent creators to sell their work on the highest quality merchandise. With over 1.2 million designs, TeePublic is sure to have something you love. You're on the road with Corey and the Angels. You're on that bus. You're in your bunk. You got your camera. You got your whatever you have and resources you have to kind of capture the things you need to have. What is it like for you to be part of a rock band experience on the road, kind of, 10 dates in how many weeks, um, uh, kind of road trip? Because I know your dad could kind of, as a documentarian, you need to get all this footage and everything else, but all of the things that come with it, especially being on that bus and all the shenanigans I'm sure that goes around, and the ego and the clashes would have been a very interesting situation for you to be there just as a person outside of being a filmmaker.
Certainly. I think when you're there as a filmmaker and a documentarian, you're very aware of the relationships and the dynamics and ensuring that you don't interrupt anything. I mean, that's one of the goals, is that you don't want to let your presence be problematic or influence anything. So I would have never wanted to let my presence get in the way, essentially. So you really are. I mean, for me, I was just trying to get the best footage that I could, and really be able to roll a lot of the time and not be in the way, and also maintain just a good dynamic with everybody, which is I've been thinking about this a lot ever since I've been chatting with I was talking with Penny Lane about this the other day, as we
Mm.
were chatting on her Substack about this notion. And I loved seeing her resonate with this, because as a documentarian, you kind of turn into your best self. You really are, because you just want to bring all of your best traits to the situation. And maybe in a more interpersonal or personal situation, you would sort of be more, I don't know, you would let an eye roll through or whatever it might be. But you're really trying to maintain, to just be really good and solid and ethical and all of these things at once. But it just comes so naturally, I think, when you're pursuing something that you care about. You just don't have to think about it, because if you care that much.
I'm sure in a lot of your interviews, maybe in some of the reviews, people tend to play backseat psychologist for some of the stuff that goes on the screen here,
Certainly.
and I'm going to attempt to do my own little version of that here. The word cult is used sometimes very lackadaisical. I mean, it's a very heavy word to throw out there. What I see though when I watch this film is that Corey's kind of like trying his best to kind of make some type of community or family, because every notion that he had that beforehand has kind of fallen apart. When his
Mhm.
biological one, he got emancipated from his parents at such a young age, like 13 or something like that, right? And there's allegations of abuse there, both physical and emotional, financial. On the other end, the other family, Hollywood, kind of like shoot him up, spit him out, and there's a lot of allegations he had from there as well. So here he is at the head of the table essentially, and he's holding on really tight and being really kind of like authoritative to. It's kind of like that thing where when you love something so much you kind of squeeze the life out of it. That's kind of like something I came across with this, and it's just something that I think that really kind of he says it quite loudly throughout the film without actually saying that, is that, his whole thing with his angels just seems like the family that he's trying to construct, but you can't be authoritative over people because they've got their own lives and their own stuff to do, and that's where
Yeah.
trouble comes. And I think it's just something that really kind of that he was kind of that I picked up on watching the film.
Well, to your point of talking about the word cult, I do think you're right about sometimes a certain terminology can be very helpful in alerting us to something or naming something and understanding it. And I think at other times it can be detrimental in creating a binary where we no longer look at the middle. And I don't know exactly how I feel in that circumstance, but I do think sometimes I find in reactions to this movie, there are false binaries that prevent us from talking about what's really going on in the middle. So people will say, I only they either only care about Corey's side, or they only care about the women's side, or they only care about, one certain aspect of it. And I think for me, it is about the network of factors going on here. And it is about the seeing how all of these perceptions of the world have worked together to create this circumstance. Because to your point, the story is about somebody who grew up in an extremely difficult and clearly abusive circumstance, turning that into a grown-up reality that is very complicated and clearly, and I think that's why all of these cult groups have become, or people that are interested in cults have been looking at this, because so many of the behaviors are just so fascinating from that point of view. And, as you say, keeping the women very close and not wanting people to go off, and keeping control over everyone. So to me, the more you can look at the entire picture, the more benefit there is to understanding what's going on. And that's what I always look for. But I also understand people have their perspectives and passions, and that's just kind of how it goes. So, we have to take it all on board.
Something I found very interesting is this kind of savior complex that he has throughout the movie.
Mm.
He really talks about good and evil in like very kind of definitive terms. He's the good, and anything kind of sabotaging him are these kind of like evil forces, sometimes maybe even supernatural or occultist or satanic or something, which I find incredibly, I don't know. Sometimes it's really hard for me to think whether he's speaking it in literal terms or metaphorical. But I think like near the end of the film, I think one of the angels, I forgot who it was, said that his wife said, he's like the Jesus of our times or stuff like, or something in that context. I was like, whoa, that's kind of again heavy language to kind of use in that kind of context, and for him to have that kind of outlook of what his perception of himself is, I think says a lot about where his his mindset is, I think.
Yes, yeah. There's an enormous amount of black and white thinking, and that kind of grandiosity into the light and the dark and all of that. And once it's very clear that once somebody or something crosses him, it goes over into the dark side. And I think you see that consistently throughout the movie. I don't know. I mean, in the world of, it's obviously it's kind of past armchair psychology at that point, and just into the overt ways that people deal with the world. And I think that idea of having an easy answer is very tempting. I mean, I think it's past armchair psychology because it's so patently untrue. I mean, obviously, the having called all of these people Satanists or on the dark side who are not is very clear, but it makes it a very clear either tactic or coping mechanism. And it is fascinating, but I guess you just have to imagine that I don't know, we all, it is endlessly fascinating. We all have to put things into categories somehow. And it's almost like the most basic category you could find is the light and the dark of life. Because we're also
Um,
all an incredible mix of those things, including, every single human, I think, has a mix of light and dark. I think there's no way around that one.
Yes, very true. It's really interesting to me over the years how, especially when I talk to documentarians, how when the pandemic hit and people had to be were in lockdown and such, how that gave them a bit of a breather to be able to look at whatever projects they were working on and kind of like tinker with it and work on it. In this case, it was a chance for you to really kind of watch your footage and kind of and kind of look what you had. How many hours of footage did you have, by the way, by the time you started doing your
No,
post?
Matthew, I never looked at it in terms of hours of footage. That's a great, I mean, I should know that because people do ask that question, but I haven't added up the hours. It was a lot of footage. And it was the pandemic that really allowed for Adam to sit and go through all the footage. And even up toward the end when we were modifying the cut and adding new things, we would sit and Star and I would trawl through different shoot days. So there was just a lot to deal with and to go through. Yeah, it was a lot. So it's difficult when there's no financing or no support. It's funny when you have non-filmmakers that will ask the question of
Mm.
like, well, can't you just piece it together? And
Yeah.
it's always very funny because it's there's no obvious path at that point when you have such an amazing fragmented amount of stuff.
The Matt's Movie Reviews podcast is brought to you by Amazon Prime Video. One of the best on-demand streaming services available, Amazon Prime Video features exclusive Amazon originals as well as popular movies and TV shows. Watch Amazon Prime Video anytime, anywhere. Well, I always kind of I kind of like something I kind of compare it to when it comes to especially documentary filmmaking is kind of like a sculptor kind of chiseling away at a rock and trying to find the form within the material, and
Mm.
coming up with that final kind of thing there. In finding that structure, when you and Adam are like, I'm sure, just talking about kind of stuff you have, um, were there kind of different kind of approaches that you were thinking of going? Were there different ways? Were you thinking sometimes you could add narration? Were you thinking this? Were you thinking that? Because a documentary can take many forms, especially in
Yeah.
post-production. I was kind of curious about whether there was any kind of like, was there ever a alternate reality where it's a different kind of documentary that could have been in front of us as opposed to the fly in the wall one we have here?
You know, I knew that I never wanted any sort of voiceover or anything like that. I mean, I'm just not that kind of person when it comes to documentaries. I personally am a huge believer in this style of documentary, or I'm a proponent of it or whatnot. I really believe in the power of the camera capturing our human behavior, and I love that aspect of it. Talking head documentaries serve a certain purpose in the documentary landscape, but I think the way that we speak and say things about ourselves is very different from how we behave over time, and I think that's a crucial component that the camera just captures. If it's there for a long time with us, it's a different sort of mirror in that capacity. So I knew I never wanted to have VO or anything like that. I think it was more, and what was clear actually from the very beginning in talking with Adam was that we were going to trace essentially what was myself and the camera's viewpoint, which was
Hmm.
being very in the world of Corey's forward momentum with this tour, and his kind of point of view, I guess, of really steaming ahead with this journey, and not being, as you said in the beginning, it's not in any way on the nose, like tongue in cheek or anything. It's very much like here, letting it be what it is and just letting the camera kind of be there and telling the story, because you don't have to underline it to let it be funny, because it is, if you find it funny, it is already humorous. So you just don't
Hmm.
have to add anything to that mix. You have to just sort of let it be there. So, and then I think you follow my point of view of as the former Angels started to speak a little bit more on tour, and they started to kind of have a little bit more awareness of different things going on, it just sort of naturally progressed from there, and you see the aperture open up.
Um, 2016 is when you started going on the road and following this. Here we are, 2026. So this is a film 10 years in the making, essentially. And
Yes.
for a lot of people out there, again, March 5, Alamo Drafthouse. People can check the film out there. Other territories can find it online through coreyfilm.com. So sometimes when I talk to filmmakers, especially documentarians, they sometimes it's really easy to let go of the project they've been working on for a long time. Sometimes they like to tinker more with it. What about yourself when it comes to Corey Feldman versus the world? Are you ready to strap yourself in that rocket and blast your way out of world Corey and find some other planets to explore? Or is there still
Uh,
some more exploration to be done here?
there's definitely more exploration to be done, because I only had a limited view of what was going on when I was filming on the road. I only had access based on kind of what Corey gave me access to, essentially, which was a lot. I mean, I think I felt that we had a really good dynamic at the time, and it was, I filmed a lot of great intense moments that I think are really, yeah, I think you see exactly what I experienced. But I think there was so much more going on, and there is so much more to that world. I've really been thinking about it a lot, and determining what else there is to be done. I mean, I think this movie took so long and was so laborious. It's hard to imagine. It's hard to imagine stepping up to that again. But I don't know. We'll just have to see what happens. To be honest, I think right now it's also still just spreading the word about the movie. You know, we have the screening, as you mentioned, Alamo Drafthouse in LA on this Friday, March 6th, and
March 6th.
and in New York on March 13th. Corey actually sent a cease and desist again for those screenings. So, but hopefully it looks like we've made it through that. So, you know, there's still things to deal with all of this, and it's an ongoing process for sure. And spreading the word about the movie is, I think, going to continue to be part of the process this year.
Um, Final question here. I don't know why, but when I was watching Corey in this movie, it kind of reminds me a bit of kind of like I don't know, version of Tommy Wiseau in a kind of way in regards to the delusions of grandeur approach to the art and other things as well. Um, Wiseau eventually would kind of come around and kind of look at what he did with his work in the room and such and kind of embrace kind of like the kind of absurdities of it and kind of like take out that mantle in a kind of way. Could you ever envision the future where Corey Feldman could be more of a have more of a in not to bring up the savior complex again, but a come to Jesus moment with himself and and embrace kind of like this what his life is and what this documentary can be because I think for a lot of people, if you just kind of just I don't know, loosen up just a little bit and kind of just looked at the kind of absurdities of maybe what the angels is and kind of just look because it's funny. There's a part in the there's a song that he does. He has an affinity for Michael Jackson for a lot of reasons, but Man in the Mirror, the song that he sings in the movie.
Yes.
Um, you know, sometimes I think he needs to take those lyrics to heart and that he sings and kind of like come to a realization of what the reality is of the situation. Can you ever see that kind of happening, or do you think he's so encrusted in just who he is because that's who he's been for a long time? That's probably not going to happen.
Well, yeah, I have a couple of answers to that. Thank you for pointing out the man in the mirror theme, as you must. It is pretty consistent through that movie. It's almost maybe a little too loud in that movie, but it was handed to us in so many ways. We just had to
Hmm.
go with it. I think there are two answers there. Look, I would argue, you can correct me if you really think I'm wrong, of course. I think Tommy Wiseau, in my observation, embraces the room phenomenon because there's kind of no other choice. I mean, I think
Hmm.
he understands he wants the kind of ownership over what has become of the room. But I don't think I think if people saw the reality of how people were experiencing the content, it wouldn't exist as it does in the first place. Like if they had that ability to see the absurdity, it wouldn't be what it is already. It just, I don't know. It's like I don't know if there's a way to flip that perspective for folks. So I just am not sure that's possible. But I, I mean, this is really the crux of the question is like if Corey could come to embrace some of the criticism that he gets. You know, there are these podcasts and radio shows that cover him in such a playful and ultimately really loving way. I mean, they're all fans of his. Um, you know, Jim and Them, the Drew Lane Show, the Bonfire, like all these guys are absolute, like they're ragging on him and obviously like making fun of him, but they also totally love him and are absolutely spreading the folklore and the music, like all the awareness of Corey big time, like to people that would absolutely have no idea who this guy is. So it's so interesting to me because that is part of being a celebrity is just having all of that feedback. And I do think it would only, I mean, I guess it benefits a person to have it out there no matter what. So I guess fighting it arguably could be part of that. I guess that's one road to take. But I think fighting it so hard that you really want to take it down is ultimately doesn't benefit a person because you know if you want to live in that world where you're still known, all of that stuff is a huge benefit. That's why we have the aphorism, all press is good press, because it's quite literally true. Like, it all drives people to that awareness. I don't know. It flummoxes me for sure, but I would love to know. I will be very excited to see through our lives what will happen there, and if he will ever change his tune and embrace that part of being a famous person.
Well, I'm sure we all hope that the Lost Boy does find his way in the future. And for everyone out there listening, Alamo Drafthouse Cinema, March 6th. And you can also go to coreyfilm.com to find other information in regards where you can watch the film. And I'm sure it's going to be hit in different markets. I know New Zealand's going to have a premiere soon. I think it's like March 3rd. Is that one coming up
I
for New
think
Zealand?
actually this Friday, I think March 5th is the New
March
Zealand
5th.
screen.
And I'm
Yeah.
sure after that, a lot of other territories, because this really is a great documentary, Marcie. And I got to give kudos to you and your crew, because you put together something really compelling and really fascinating here, for people to watch. And everyone out there, if you can go to the cinema to watch this, do so. Support independent filmmakers. Go out there, watch this in cinemas, because I think this is the type of documentary that is really kind of something to be shared with a communal experience in a lot of ways, I think, for a lot of people, because it is that kind of fascinating and entertaining in many ways, and such an interesting person that Corey is, flaws and all. And Marcie Hume, I thank you so very much for your time today. Best of luck with the rollout for this documentary. 10 years. It's a long time.
Yeah.
And I know
Thanks.
that and now it's going out there. And yeah, thank you for your time today.
You're the best. Thank you so much.
Thank you for watching the Matt's Movie Reviews channel. Please subscribe for more reviews, podcast interviews, and exclusive content.